This is episode number 44 of the Feed Me, Fuel Me podcast with our special guest, Dr. Jonathan Kurka. Welcome to the Feed Me, Fuel Me podcast. My name is Jeff Thornton, alongside my co-host, Michael Anders. Each week, we bring you an inspiring person or message related to our three pillars of success: manifestation, business, fitness, and nutrition. Our intent is to enrich, educate, and empower our audience to take action, control, and accountability for their decisions. Thank you for allowing us to join you on your journey. Now let's get started. We would like to thank our sponsor, XD Fitness. XD is the leading company in Kevlar-based fitness equipment. XD has revolutionized the industry with their fitness equipment, including medicine balls, kettlebells, sandbags, and lifting accessories, such as lifting belts, jump ropes, and wrist wraps, all made of DuPont Kevlar. Go check them out at xdfit.com and join the Kevlar movement.
What's up, fam? Welcome to episode 44 of the Feed Me, Fuel Me podcast. Mike Anders here with my co-host, Jeff Thornton. And today we've got ASU instructor, my good friend, Dr. John Kurka.
Yeah, nice to be here.
Representing the exercise and wellness department.
Yeah.
What's up, brother? How are you?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man.
Thanks for
Pleasure
joining.
to have you. A little background on John. His wife, Leanna, was actually my lab coordinator while I was completing my master's at Arizona State. And by happenstance, found out that her family owns a CrossFit gym back home in Illinois, where John's from. And we kind of fostered a relationship, the three of us, and opened the gym in April of 2013. And you guys were there, 5 a.m., first day, first workout, with no equipment.
Right.
Just Tabata, push-ups, sit-ups, air squats, and I think I sprinkled some burpees in there somewhere.
Hey, we got the heart rate up.
But you got a really interesting journey, man. I was present for the majority of your postgraduate work, and really you did some really interesting research on sleep, and your path to a PhD took a little bit longer than you anticipated.
Yes.
That's while that's a success in and of itself, it's definitely a grind. I know there's a lot of moments between that master's and that doctorate where you were like, I don't know if I want to keep doing this shit.
Yeah.
So for everybody that's being introduced to you today, can you kind of just walk us through your professional, personal journey to a PhD and kind of how that track went for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting path to how you end up where you're at. Because coming out of high school, I was always kind of interested in sports, interested in exercise. I never really excelled at one particular sport, but I enjoyed being active. And I ended up at a university to study engineering. And just found out it just wasn't for me. After a year, it wasn't for me. Left the university.
Did you start there in engineering because that's what you that was the proven path to success in education?
Proven path. That's what the aptitude tests in high school told me I should be. Is an engineer. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll be an engineer. I like math. Let's do that. And just kind of like a little kind of that narrow view, not realizing there's so many options. And after about a year and a half, just like, this isn't right. I had trouble in school, just sticking with it. And then kind of danced around a little bit, stopped going to college, just kind of worked for a little bit. And then, someone mentioned exercise science. And I was like, I've never heard of this before. How did I not know about this? And went back to school in 2007. After I dabbled with a few other degrees here and there, but the exercise science seemed to be what stuck. And 9 years later, finally ended up with my PhD, but it was a long road from then till now. But it's like I tell some of my students, it's like I took 20 straight semesters of class with a few summers sprinkled in there.
Jeez,
no kidding.
Yeah, but I tell you, I love this topic.
Yeah.
I think it's just so cool how things go full circle, because just the other month, kind of, you mentioned my research in sleep. A lot of my research kind of focuses in on measuring activity and sleep throughout a full day, which takes they use accelerometers to measure that movement or lack of movement, and a lot of this data has to be processed with kind of down to the engineering algorithms that engineers use.
Okay.
So it's like, oh, and it's like just a few months ago, I'm like, I kind of had a Twilight Zone thing, because I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I started doing.
Right.
And then another career or another degree I kind of dabbled in was education, which it turned, I teach, X amount of classes per semester. It's just those two things I was always interested in, but those two specific paths just weren't for me.
Right.
But I ended up doing those things just on a different journey. So
right, just applying them to a different field.
That's incredible.
I got my undergraduate degree in exercise science at Illinois State. And then they accepted me for a graduate position. I managed to get my master's in exercise physiology while getting a master's in nutrition as well.
Okay.
At the same time. And then ASU, the opportunity to come here to get a PhD opened up, and couldn't pass it down. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's awesome,
That's
dude.
awesome, man. That's a journey.
Wow. 20 straight semesters.
20 straight
Holy
semesters,
shit.
yeah.
I'm
I am not enrolled this semester. I was like, yeah.
Done.
I'm
Yeah.
like bowing to you right now.
Yeah.
I don't, like,
That's
good
crazy,
night.
man.
Yeah.
Wow, 20. I'm baffled by that. I didn't know that. Like, I know you'd been in school for a long time, but now that I'm putting it into context and creating my own little timeline, that's a lot
January
of school,
07.
Yeah.
January 07 to December of 16. So
What's your mental state like going through that type of rigorous, coursework through that for that amount of time?
it really is, like he mentioned, it is a grind at certain times. But I share those with people. It's like you got to find something that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
I mean, I can talk exercise and I can talk statistics for hours.
Yeah.
I mean, I love analyzing stuff. It's like people tease me. It's like, you analyze your workouts. I'm like, I'd love to analyze stuff.
So here's a question for you. And I was faced with that fork in the road along the way with my master's. Who should get a PhD?
People that are interested in research.
Okay.
Because a PhD is very heavy in research. I mean, that's kind of what you do for the X amount of years that you are in the program. There is some supplemental coursework to kind of finalize your degree, but a lot of it is reading the research, is being familiar with why.
So this kind of alludes to what we're going to talk about today. So if you want to spend your day doing the programming, counting the reps, getting to know people and acquiring members and doing the personal stuff, is a PhD. If you feel like that's your life path, is a PhD for you?
I would say no.
Okay.
I would say no. I mean, the programming, kind of what you do on a day-to-day basis with your programming. You have certifications that kind of optimize you for that. You can have a master's degree that kind of adds your education, but a lot of that is comes along with experience. And the research is kind of the why you programmed that way.
Sure.
Why does periodization work this way? What populations does it work for?
Right.
Kind of thing. It's kind of the difference, the terminology that I brushed up. I mean, the difference between efficacy and effectiveness.
Right.
Which in research they kind of stick to, or it's mainly efficacy, which does it work.
Right. Okay.
And then effectiveness. Okay, who can it work for, and how long can it work for? And it's kind of more that application side of things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Perfect.
Yeah.
Because it was interesting in my master's. When we were getting started, the people that decided to go non-thesis and the people that decided to go thesis, and the allure that a PhD has And I remember having this conversation with Rachel. Do you remember Rachel? She's like one of the most prominent female strength conditioning coaches in baseball now.
Yeah.
I remember having this conversation with her early on and asking her, if that's what you want to do with the rest of your life, why do you need a PhD? And she had been led to believe as a female in the industry that it was going to put her resume at the top of the stack. However, as you can attest to, that track can be so long, depending on, how fast you're able to get your population and stuff like that and get your study going. Depending on how long that takes you, it can be, it can take you a little bit, it can take you a number of years. And the point I was trying to get across to her back then was, if you wait to get your PhD, you will have taken yourself out of the game so long that those credentials don't carry any weight, because now you don't have any experience in strength coaching. So now everything that you're doing is based on theory, technically, and not practical application. Right. And, what we want to talk about today is where the art meets the science, because there are people that are geniuses in the industry that don't have any letters after their names. And then there's people that put out industry changing research, but don't, it's like you said, it's very efficacious, but there's no, you have to do that same study on multiple populations to see how effective it actually is.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So based on, your experience, where does the rubber meet the road? Where's the sweet spot between education and experience?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Oh man. Yeah. I don't know. I think it all depends on how you apply it. I think it all depends on the person. I know colleagues, I work with colleagues that, have their PhD, they're in the research, but they know why stuff happens, but then they apply to their research to so many people, and they interact with a lot of different areas and get that hands-on experience also. It kind of all depends on, kind of who you work with, your collaborations, who you can bring in on your grant or your team to kind of add in that practical application. And it's all kind of being open-minded. And I think that's a lot of things that I think a lot of people can work on is, being open-minded to, other people's experiences. So that's why I would, that's usually my recommendation, is just keeping that open mind, having that PhD, that research side of thing, but then having someone that provides that practical application, maybe having statisticians kind of thinking of the whole like grant team, if you were to submit a grant, and kind of you're all working together, speaking not necessarily the same language, but you're on the same path, kind of adding in your own language. Yeah.
Right. So let's dive into some of the research that you've done to earn that PhD. What was your study? What was it based on? Who did you study? And what were your findings?
My dissertation was a study on whether or not high intensity interval training or moderate intensity continuous training would improve sleep in a middle-aged population with sleep problems.
Okay. So you already don't sleep well.
Right.
And you're trying to figure out whether HIIT training or steady state training, so to speak.
Yes.
Which one's better to improve sleep?
Exactly.
Okay.
With treadmill walking.
Okay.
Treadmill walking. Because generally these people, which was part of the reason it kind of took me a long time, was finding the people. But the people were healthy, perfectly fine to do high intensity interval training.
Okay.
Which without doctor supervision.
Sure.
Because they found high intensity interval training is very safe, but you always want to make sure and have a doctor present if they have some contraindications to that high intensity training.
Right.
But I that would kind of hold things up even more for my project. So I wanted to make sure that they were cleared, didn't have to have a physician, but they then had to have poor sleep.
Okay.
It was difficult to find that combination.
Because
How do you go about finding that?
Yeah, what were some of the challenges in finding? Because it's not so much finding the people, it's finding the amount of people that substantiate your findings.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
You need to find a certain amount of people so you don't end up with a false negative.
Yes.
Which I would say my research kind of jumping at the end. Really, I did not find significant differences between the conditions.
Okay.
But I had they call it underpowered. Basically, I didn't have enough people, and therefore there may have been a false negative.
Sure.
But let's say.
So so finding your people, what were some of the issues?
When it comes to sleep problems, I believe there are a lot of what they call comorbidities, a lot of other things that tend to play into each other. The human body is a very complex system, obviously, and when one thing goes wrong, it's going to affect the other. And trying to find someone who is just had very poor sleep, but everything else was fine was just a challenge.
Right. That's like a micro niche in a way. When people, how do you go? Is there a way of going about that when you're going for research, or is it just sending out surveys like on a mass, like a subscription list and saying, hey, fill in the blanks and we'll bring you in for our research? How's that work?
A lot of that was, I think, my biggest challenge, which was recruiting. Recruiting is not easy. Yeah. There's certain populations that are more apt to be in research studies. Yeah. You have to, it's good to have an incentive at the end, but you can't have too big of an incentive. Otherwise, it's considered coercion. So it's got to be kind of that optimal area. Okay. And just some people, just aren't interested in it. And so it makes it kind of difficult. And that is very much a skill, is recruiting enough people.
That's tough. And what's the time frame? Say you found that person. Yeah. How long do they have to stay in your test group, or I don't know if that's what we to call them?
Oh yeah. My study was a 5-week study. Okay. So they had to meet with me twice a week. I tried to create as much control as I could while still allowing some free living, but they had to meet with me twice a week on consecutive days at the same time of day. So that's the whole thing with research. You try to control as much as you can. Yeah. But then the more control you have, the harder it is to get that person kind of into your study. I had twice a week. For I think it was 4 or 5 weeks.
No kidding.
So I had, a period in between each condition, kind of a before and an after, and all that stuff. So that's what made it kind of challenging. Yeah. We used treadmill walking, high intensity interval training, and then moderate intensity training. Then we had a no exercise control also. You always like to have that control group, just kind of bringing them into the lab, just like they would have been exercising, but they're not.
Mm-hmm. So. That's so interesting, because I don't come from a research, I come from a computer science background, and within IT, you don't really need, they have guys that go the PhD route, but it's one of those things, if you're going to be a programmer, you can sit at home and learn that at the age of 6 years old, and you don't need a degree to be a good programmer. Most of them aren't. But it's just so interesting that I didn't know that type of work, and it's sort of like a business. You have to go out and get these people. I didn't know it was that intensive. I knew it was the research intensive, but actually having to find your case group, I didn't even realize that. That's incredible.
Yeah, especially with working with humans. Especially, human population it can be challenging for sure. Yeah. Working with the kind of improving the health of the population, improving just kind of anyone's health it can be challenging getting those subjects.
That's incredible, man. Because I come from a computer background. You just you can just throw some code on the computer, put some algorithms in, let it run overnight, and there you go. You know what I mean? We're good to go. The computer's doing its thing.
And that's the thing. It's like I do the same thing. Yeah. I did the same thing with my dissertation. It's the numbers were people kind of thing. It's like the numbers were actually coming from a person. So, that's what makes it a little challenging. It was always my challenge was recruiting, and then everyone that got into my study stuck with it.
Well, that's good.
That's very good.
Yeah.
So you had 100%.
Yes. 100% adherence.
Rate. Yes.
Yeah, people stuck with it.
That's next to impossible.
Yeah. I was aiming for 19 people. I only got 11 in. Yep. And then basically at that point it had been, I think, a little over 2 years, about coming up on 2 years. So we were like, let's wrap this up and kind of learn the lessons and write it up. But looking at some I developed a few of my new techniques for analyzing my data, but I'm looking into kind of putting it through some validated algorithms to see if any significant differences between the groups are there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's awesome.
So let me ask you this: in with regards to exercise and wellness, nutrition, sport performance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it seems to me, and if I'm wrong, let me know. It seems to me that there is an extreme reluctance in academia to do outright performance research. And they want to they're more apt to sign off on research that's done on sick, unhealthy, sedentary populations as opposed to the high performers and what they're doing right as a means to scale it down in terms of exercise prescription.
Yeah. I think that's
would you say that's a true statement?
I haven't looked much at the research on performance, but I think it comes down to just working with different populations.
Yeah.
I think a lot of academia sees it as 80% of our country doesn't get enough physical activity.
Right.
And the ones that do get enough physical activity, that's great. Okay, excellent. Okay, how can we get this 80% to get more?
Right.
And how can we treat the large amount of sick, diseased people, get them more physical activity, proper nutrition, and kind of build up the information on the people that kind of need it most. Right. I think that's kind of where they're aiming. And I think a lot of it's they call it external validity, kind of what they found, what a research study finds, and then who it can apply to. Right. And I think that a lot of them, they aim it at that sick, diseased population is where they see something more performance driven. They'll kind of aim it more at the performance. Gotcha. So I think the very unique thing, which I find awesome, and I'm very passionate about, the whole idea of CrossFit is one of the slogans is hard enough, challenging enough for the elite, but scalable to all. Right. I think that sums it up how it should be. I mean, you can prescribe exercise, a set of exercises, and just because someone is 70 years old, no, don't take away exercise because they need it to improve or maintain their health. Right. You just scale it. Right. Because we want people to do those activities of daily living that people kind of miss out on as they get older. And I think a lot of what some of those CrossFit exercises bring are those activities of daily living exercises, like a squat, an air squat. You don't have to have massive amounts of weight. Scale it down to an air squat if you need, because that's an activity of daily living, getting up off of a chair. So,
because I mean, ultimately, using that CrossFit example, all we're looking for from one workout to the next is that regardless of your fitness level, experience level, are you getting the intended metabolic response from a given workout? Yeah. If the workout is designed as written to be done prescribed in 7 minutes or less, if it's going to take you 11, well, you've missed the point and it hasn't been scaled appropriately. Yeah. But by that same token, if you do it in 3, it was too easy. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And I think that's where, on the practical side, a lot of practitioners, coaches, trainers, whatever you want to call them, miss the boat, and they just write up workouts for workout's sake. And when you start putting those metrics of performance on there, you should be able to accomplish so many rounds. You should be able to do this workout in, this time domain. Yeah. That forces people to become okay with that concept of scaling, because that human element, that ego says, well, I can do that weight. It's just going to take me a little longer. Well, that's not the point. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So with regards to application and research, and we touched on this with Dr. Nurek a couple of weeks ago, when it comes to what's being done in the field and what's being studied in the lab, what's driving research? Is it a question that you just have in your head based on your education, or do you see something that's going on out in the world and you're like, I want to know how valid that methodology really is? In the, you know, speaking for education in general, not just you.
That's interesting because I was my training was more of you read the literature, you find where the holes are, and you fill the holes. You know, as a PhD, you know, as a scientist, you create new information where information was not. Okay. But the more I get into the practical side of things, you know, teaching my students and kind of meeting with those that do this on a regular basis with people, I find it is very much, it's like, oh, that's an interesting theory that you have on this type of training or whatnot, and then it's like, I'd like to test that actually. I'd like to quantify why that happens. So I'm actually starting to get more into that other side of things, like seeing, you know, kind of based on what you've thought this would work, I'd like to prove if it works. Which is always the fun stuff.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's how you truly end up researching what you love.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Like, you're genuinely interested in that phenomenon or that school of thought or, you know, that philosophy of training. Let's find out how valid it really is.
Yes.
Because it works for those 5 people that you're coaching right now.
Yes.
Can it be applied to all?
Yes. Yeah.
You know, or how big is how wide can you actually cast that net?
Yeah, that'd be an excellent way to say it. Yeah, how wide can we cast that net? And that's kind of what I would like to get into, is like kind of diving more into that. I see this is what I'm passionate about. I think it's worked for me. I mean, I feel like, I'm 33 years old. I'm the fittest I've ever been in my life. And I was like, I'd like to get other people interested in this stuff and see if it works for them, but then kind of lay down the proof for, why this stuff works the way it works. Or
let's get together on a study, man.
Like,
let's do it.
Like you got tons of people.
I'm not fucking around. Like I'm sure there's a lot of people, myself for sure, that would, like to participate in the validation from a scientific standpoint.
I think that'd be fun
of what we do.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. We can, because we have a lot of metrics and measurables in the gym, but it hasn't. I know for sure. I appreciate the gold stars, and my metric of success in the gym is an 85%. On a test day, if you don't PR, if 85% of our regular members, and by regular I mean show up every week 3 to 5 times consistently, if that population of members, if 85% of them don't PR in a given test, then my programming has failed somewhere, and I need to go back and look at it. Okay. So I'd love to scientifically substantiate that, though. That's
absolutely
so interesting.
That's awesome.
That's really awesome.
And that's a fun part about science, is that we can validate the stuff. I mean, there's so many. I mean, I think the word validate. There's so many fitness trackers out there. There's so many. There's so much data, that sometimes it's hard to know where to start. It's like, where do we start? There's just so much information, and validating these things, wearing trackers on your wrist or your hip, or the sleep trackers or whatnot. It's like validating this stuff. It's like making sure it's it's doing what we want it to do. It's having the the effect that we want it to have. Is always an important thing. It's always fun to get your hands on that stuff. Because then you can publish it. See, look, it's like, it works. It's like, not only do you believe it, but hey, you got proof. You got proof that it works.
And that's what's so interesting. Is like, I don't know, Dr. Glenn Norton. He's really known in the bodybuilding, powerlifting space.
Name sounds familiar.
Yeah. Well, he got his doctorate, and he was going through the whole powerlifting, bodybuilding phase. And it was interesting because he actually, he did those events. He actually competed in shows. But he did the research behind it and sort of dispelled a lot of myths, the bro science within the bodybuilding community, you either hate the guy or you love him, because you're either the guy who's the grunt in the gym, the Branch Warrens that are just tearing weight up, or you're really like the Glenn Norton that are really scientific about it and they understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting point of view that he has, is that, and I think you're the same way, is that you not only understand the research side of things, but you also understand the practical side of things. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people, they don't have that balance. It's like you're heavily weight on one side or the other. There's no meeting of the minds in that middle point.
Yeah.
How do you sort of like help the industry move forward in that way, from your perspective, of where you can start teaching people to like have that, like you said, open-mindedness about, not only just the research, but the practitioner being a researcher and the researcher being a practitioner?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's language, just learning how to speak both languages. Now, I mean, kind of getting academia into the whole, like, all right, this is what people are doing. That, a group of people found this very interesting. They found it effective. They enjoy it, and that's the key thing. It's like you want people to enjoy it. I mean, we want to get the 80% active. Let's get them something that's enjoyed. They enjoy it. That's popular, and kind of the talking both languages is like they enjoy it. All right, let's study it. Let's validate it. Let's see. Let's see the proof behind why it's working. Yeah. But then the other side of things, telling someone, all right, you're doing this because of this. Yeah. This is why we're doing what you're doing. I mean, you kind of say, trust the process. And it's like that, the process is this, there's a reason I have that process. Right. And it is usually based on not only experience, but also kind of what the science has said, right? There's a reason you take this, supplement at this time of day. Like I often think of creatine supplement at night. And it's like there's the science is behind that and what, so on and so forth. So
that's And that's interesting. Within like going back to Dr. Nurek's interview that we had a few weeks ago, do you within your research, do you look at things that are trending, like the new diets or the new supplements, and base your research off of what the mass market's sort of trending towards? Yeah. And then you say, okay, let me look from a research base and sort of, validate it or dispel the myth? Or do you just follow your own track and create your own sort of hypothesis on things?
I kind of like to go that route. That's kind of more what I'm aiming into. I'm not huge. I don't know much, not nearly as much as Dr. Nerd, because I'm familiar with her work on the nutrition side of things. But I'm kind of more interested in, it's like, all right, we are starting to practice some of these like mobility routines and, strength training routines and, using movements that are scalable for all. It's like, all right, this is starting to gain some popularity. Let's see if it works. And let's see the proof behind it, so we can share that. What is the proof? What actually is it doing? And the ultimate goal is to improve people's fitness. And fitness has numbers, physiological numbers that we can bank on, because by improving someone's fitness, you improve their health and overall predictive mortality and so on and so forth.
Awesome.
So let me ask you a question. Is there anything out there right now, like beyond a shadow of a doubt, you probably don't even have to research it, that's going on in the community and being touted, being held as gospel, that is absolute bullshit in the industry?
There's nothing I can think of. It's again, there's a lot of stuff that you can't read everything. So I'm sure there is some stuff that is very much just kind of accepted as gospel, even though there's no actual proof behind it. Sure. But someone at some point, I would hope, created a theory based off of the knowledge that they knew. So I don't know, my viewpoint, again, kind of where I am an academic. I got my PhD, but I kind of steer away from the whole, they call it null hypothesis testing, which is the idea that, if something's not proven to be true, then it really isn't. Whereas I like to think it's like, just because you can't prove it to be true doesn't mean it's not.
Just because you didn't put it on Facebook doesn't mean it didn't happen.
No,
innocent until proven guilty.
Got it.
Yeah. So, but it's like, I wrote my dissertation. It's like, we accept the null hypothesis because this. Basically, we found nothing. Therefore, there's nothing there. Where I kind of like to bring the idea that just because you didn't find something doesn't mean nothing is really there.
Sure.
And
Right.
that's it kind of, I think that extra step is where some academics just stop.
Really?
And it's like, oh, there's no proof for that, therefore it is not true. It's like that.
Right.
I mean, there's so much about the human body we don't know, because we've only been able to study this within, the last, maybe 100 years. I mean, we're a very new field. So I think there's a lot of information we just don't know yet.
So how do you, like, let's use your research, for example. How do you create that wider net without watering down the efficacy of your research? Do you do that same study on a different population, a different age range, within the same parameters, and then you take those now 7 different studies and put them together for a conglomeration of findings?
Yes.
Is that how that would work?
It would, yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, there's plenty of publications on certain things that have done just that. It's like, exercise improves blood pressure, and we know that in this in this population, in so many populations, and then they compile all the research and they crank out a meta-analysis that actually shows, all right, this is the effect across a wide variety of populations, and they can actually quantify that actual effect.
And you can take that same methodology and apply it to the application of exercise, for example, high intensity interval training, and then use a specific protocol over a specific period of time and say, have one study that analyzes blood pressure, one that studies lipid profile, one that studies body composition. And, now you have 6, 7, 8 different studies. And then you can now you've substantiated that this protocol over this period of time in this population does these 8 things.
Yes. Yeah. You can do that. It's interesting. The human body never works the way you think it will, because there are different types of exercise that work for different things.
Right.
So it's like you can if my memory serves me right, as far as blood pressure goes, you don't have to do high intensity training. You can doing exercise improves blood pressure, whereas other things may be more beneficial when you get into that upper intensity. So it depends on what you're looking at. There's so many different outcome variables within the body that we're always interested in. So,
man,
that blows my mind, man.
Yeah.
It's like the amount of data that you have to gather just to come to not a conclusion. I mean, just to get to the information you need. It blows my mind, man.
Yeah, I always try to relay that to my students. I'm like, we think we know all this. I'm like, just wait for that study to come out that shows the opposite or something. I mean, there's always both sides to a story, and there's just so much we just don't know yet, and that's part of kind of what academia does bring to the table of practice, is that, all right, we're finding the proof behind all these things. And the one thing that's like with academia is it just takes time. Yeah. It takes so much time. I mean,
so it's been said that research is 5 to 10 years behind what's being practiced in certain arenas. How true is that?
I do not think that's inaccurate.
Okay.
I think that's accurate. 5. Yeah, because I mean, it takes from the data you collect to the time it's published. It's not uncommon for that to be 3 years, and that's if you're on that project. Yeah. And then once it's published, then people have to read it, and then it has to circulate, and this kind of build, and that will take time also. Again, depending on the journal articles. I mean, I'm analyzing data from 2011, 2012. We find new methods of analyzing stuff, and then what if I put that stuff from that time period into this method, this algorithm here, and see if the results are different, and then report that. And it just takes time. I mean, I had one publication from the time I submitted the publication. So basically, it was my research had been collected. I analyzed the results. I wrote up the paper from the time I first submitted the paper to the time that it actually hit PubMed was a calendar year.
Oh,
holy
A
shit.
full calendar year. Yeah. And that was basically just in the system, in the publication system.
That's not even, it hasn't even touched people's hands yet.
No, I mean, a few peer reviews, and that's it. And they're like, revise this. But I mean, it takes a couple months.
God, that's frustrating. It
Yeah,
seems like.
yeah. It just, it's part of the process.
Yeah.
It really is. There's just so much information, and any academic will tell you there's always work to be done, and it's just some stuff just takes longer to get done than others.
That's
so.
wild, man.
Yeah.
The patience that you have to go through those processes, man. My hat's off to you, man. That's incredible.
And then there's some that I think I turned around within, like, I think I submitted it, and then within 4 months they stamped it good to go, and out the door, and I'm just. It's kind of a surreal thing. It's like, really?
Yeah.
Everything's okay?
Yeah.
And it's like how it goes. So it all depends on kind of where you're trying to publish to. I mean, the more popular, the harder it is to get into, the more sound your study has to be. But again, like you said, getting it out to the population, kind of into that practice, the 5 to 10 years, it takes time. But again, I think that's why it's important to recognize, all right, what are people doing?
Right.
Maybe let's start there, as well as trying to fill holes that we find in the literature. Let's start where people are practicing, and then see if it works. And then kind of that time frame may still be the same, but at that point, it's like, oh, people are already doing something, though.
Which leads me to my next question. How can we, on the practical side, and I put this on us because I know my average member is not reading the Journal of Strength and Conditioning.
Right.
They don't have access to PubMed.
Yeah.
How do we as practitioners take the research that you've done and get our people up to speed on sound, solid, proven research, and not the garbage that comes out in, Muscle and Fitness magazine, by, and you have everybody trying to do a fitness regimen that worked for one person.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. What Jay Cutler does, Mr. Olympia, who's on all kinds of gear.
Yeah.
Natural.
But they'll publish his routine and say, go do this and you'll get those results.
Yeah.
And that's not real.
No.
They're plaguing on the ignorance of their readers and subscribers, and people take that false rhetoric and wonder why they're not getting any results. And I think that's a part of the reason that 80% of our population is in the state that it's in, because they try all this shit that works for these, amazing athletes, professional bodybuilders that have a lot of help and a lot of resources, not above and beyond steroids. They just have access to cooks and solid nutrition and da-da-da-da-da-da. On top of, all right, so he did an undulating periodization program and, did 45 sets of 12, and now he looks like the Hulk.
Yeah.
That's not going to work for the average person. So what can we do, those of us that are in a place of influence, to help get what you're doing in their hands?
Yeah. Again, I kind of liken back to my training. I think it's all based on education, kind of the information that you take in and your ability to critique it. I mean, as a PhD, I've been trained to critique everything. Everything I read, I find myself naturally doing. It's like everything I read, I'm like, well, I don't know about this. I don't know about this. Yeah. It's just questioning it. Right. And then kind of reframing it to the population you're working with. It's like, is this applicable to the population? And what part of it is, what part of it isn't? And then just kind of, banking on your education, but then also improving your education. I tell my students, it's like, your education does not stop with your undergraduate degree. We've put you through the classes to understand the language. Now you've got to go out and keep reading. Otherwise, things just stay stuck. And you're kind of like, I don't know. I think people with master's degrees, I think that's a great population. That's a great middle ground between everything, because a master's degree, you've got plenty of class experience, you know your stuff, but at the end of the master's degree, you've also probably got a good amount of language of the research. You know how to read a research article and not have your head spinning.
Right.
Because so a lot of my kind of undergraduate classes, I show them a research article and their eyes start to cross. So I'm like, no, it's not as daunting as you think it is. You just got to break it down.
Yeah.
And but the more practice you get, the better.
Right.
And I think it's just kind of a meshing of those two things. It's like you read something in, an article that's written to the masses. It says, do this, do this, do this, and just kind of like, maybe presenting it to some people and kind of help translate what some of those things are. And then, maybe even compare it to a research article and try and translate that to your general population. And yeah, it's just an ongoing cycle of just kind of more and more information.
Do you think there should be more alliances between you guys in research and us on the practical side?
Oh, absolutely.
Because I, without a doubt, believe that there is something there's additive value there.
Yeah.
And there's definitely something to be shared on both sides of that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen because so many of us, subscribe to the train of thought that life doesn't happen in a vacuum.
Yes.
And at the same time, the folks sitting on your side of the fence are like, well, where's the proof?
Yes. Yeah.
So why don't we get together and prove it together? I
think that collaboration is something a lot of things are missing. We're missing that.
Kind of like, where I always ask the people in the medical field, are they getting better at prescribing less pills and discovering the root of problems? On this topic, are we getting better? And by we, you and I, research and application, are we getting better at bridging that gap and connecting those dots, connecting those two worlds? Yeah. Or is it still a stalemate?
I would hope we're getting better. In my experience, I know the people I worked with have gotten better. I've some very traditional academics. I feel like I've kind of helped kind of bring into that whole idea of practice and what can overcoming the stereotypes of certain exercises, certain workouts, and kind of understanding that this is beneficial. Let's bring the academic side into things. I think that collaboration is something a lot of things are missing. We're missing on big time.
Yeah.
So
you see, it seems to be an ego play on both sides, so to speak, because you hear the research side of the fence say one thing and the practitioner says another thing, and they never find a common ground to say, I can see value in your point. Yeah. It's just always like, no, it doesn't make sense to me. Yeah. And they just squash it, and it goes both ways. Yeah. And just leaning on the fitness industry, so to speak, is we need, I think, to start helping bridge that gap, just my opinion, is we need more research celebrity type of individual-minded people that can get on a platform like a YouTube, whatever, become social influencers and get the real message out there. Yeah. Because, just going to like the LA Fit Expo, you have a supplement company and they put these pro bodybuilders in front of these kids. Yeah. And the kid asked, and I said this last time, is there a window for me to hit my protein? And this pro bodybuilder guy ripped, shredded, that's how you want to look. Yeah. If you don't get it 5 minutes after your workout, you're done. Your body's not going to absorb any protein. And I'm just sitting there in the crowd. I'm just like, and this kid, like, this is the information that he's feeding this kid. Yeah. And that's what he's going to get in these magazines. And these are the key people you're looking up to. So I think we need people in this social industry from a research base that are sort of that celebrity status where kids can look up to and actually get real information instead of just this, I say bro science, but there's just crap information that's just fed from one guy to the next or one gal to the next. Yeah. And that's just my opinion. I mean, you see it all the time. Yeah. Because it's not interesting to look at, like you said, research articles that go cross-eyed. Yeah. But it's easy to look at Jay Cutler shredded and says, chicken, broccoli, and optimum nutrition. Go at it,
It worked for me. It'll work for you.
Yeah. The Testimonial has done just incredible things, interesting things for the fitness industry. And It's like, oh, what works for me will work for you. And like, not likely.
Right.
What works for me is going to need some adjusting to actually work for you.
Yeah.
But I mean, the concepts are there. The idea behind, what he probably said is there, but it's like, how much time? It's like, well, that may depend on the person. That may depend on the exercise. Whereas, where actually is the proof behind that? And that's, I totally agree. I think so, and I think that's starting to develop. I've seen that a little bit, is an actual scientist, starting a company. This is what we're going to practice. Yeah. Even people starting companies and bringing in scientists as their collaborators for what they do, for what they would prescribe.
Right.
I've seen that actually happen. It's very encouraging.
That's awesome. And that's sort of like what FitAid did, correct?
Mm-hmm.
FitAid?
When you met the guy, you had the competitor in him. I'll let you explain the story.
Aaron Hind, the owner and formulator of FitAid, had a long-standing chiropractic practice prior to getting into the supplement industry. So he took that knowledge and his practical application of nutrition, and more specifically micronutrition, and created a formulation that has now become FitAid and a couple other variations thereof. And it's really encouraging because it's not Red Bull. Not that there's anything wrong with Red Bull, but it's not. It's a recovery drink, not an energy drink.
Formulated differently.
Yeah, and when you look at the difference between the two, so often people were like, "Oh, you want an awesome workout? Smash this Red Bull." Now, FitAid has created a product that is both pre and post and has proven benefits on both sides that are driven by a scientific mind.
Interesting.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that, like you were saying, that's where the shift is really going to occur, is when your people start to become celebrities.
Yeah.
And not even necessarily celebrities, but like get out of the lab, get on Instagram, get on YouTube, and just start presenting their shit. Yeah. Because Jessica actually brought up a very good point, because she's pursuing some entrepreneurial stuff right now, and starting to push what she's found through experience and research. And, now those thoughts are hers.
Yes.
It's taken her this long to pull that trigger because she was so worried about the pushback she was going to get from the research community as to how validated is it really, where's the proof, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And I think that it's going to make a lot of headway when you guys stop caring about what your peers think. And it's already been substantiated. You have so much experience and so much knowledge. Take the platform and start spitting that stuff. Because like Jeff said, there are all these people that are the figureheads of the fitness industry that have experienced great success on a personal level, and they're the ones that are casting a wide net that may or may not be the ticket. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And that's, I definitely understand that the peer review process is very important to academics.
Sure.
And there have been people that, have had great ideas, kind of started on that whole, like, oh, let's dive into this, and, maybe a few steps too fast. And it just doesn't sit well with that tradition kind of thing. And it's like, it takes, we're talking like a paradigm shift. We're talking like, all right, let's rethink how this profession, how academia kind of operates, and maybe kind of go that, that kind of what you mentioned, the example of, you said Eric Hind, kind of more that thing. It's like, take this, and it's like, it'd be awesome to, I'm not familiar with his research, but it's like, oh, he's got good sound biology behind it, good sound practice. Like, let's put a control group against it. Let's take people through the same workouts and similar populations, and see the differences. As a researcher, you control as much as you can, and then with sound statistics, you can see, all right, what are the differences?
Because I really think, I like what you're saying, But I really think that's where Bill Nye, the science guy, really struck a chord with mainstream America.
Right.
Is that he's a personality that you remember as, this is the guy that taught me science, and he made it fun and interesting.
Yeah.
And I think we need more of that, because we're getting kids get a lot of fluff. You know what I mean? Like just bullshit information. And if you could have people, I'm not saying all his stuff is valid that he says, you know, there could be disputing facts, but I mean, there's a platform that's available to all of us.
Yes.
And I think researchers should start, I can say, I think it should be leveraged, because your voice is so powerful and it can impact so many people in a beneficial way. Yeah. Instead of getting, you know, just like you said, that one-off model who got a killer body just from eating malnutrition, you know, like you know what I mean?
Right.
And I think it's just I think it can go a lot further and reach a lot of people, because I don't think a lot of kids, especially when I was coming up, we didn't get exposed to a lot of research. You just see the people you see on TV, like, okay, Mr. T knows what he's talking about. Yeah. You know? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, like we said, I mean, I think that all comes down to language.
Yeah,
and I mean, even in academia, I see the collaborations happening. It used to be, you know, to get a grant, you put your name on it, maybe someone else that, you know, added a little bit to it and you submitted it. Nowadays, you can't, I mean, it's harder to get a big grant if you don't have other people adding in. That's because there's always language that you can translate things. It's like, you know, me trying to, you know, teaching my some of my, like a 200 level undergraduate exercise programming class. I find it somewhat difficult to translate the information I know in a way that they, again, find it interesting. They can pick up relatively quickly. It's just a difference of language. That was the biggest challenge in my dissertation, is going from writing my dissertation in the dissertation language, which is very technical and very, I would call it dry. It's just very cut and dry, to talking to my undergraduate students, because it's like, yes, I have to share the information, but if I'm reading my dissertation, you know, no one can stay awake for that whole thing. It's just not going to happen. So it's like, you know, keeping people engaged with that language. Yeah.
Interesting. So interesting, man.
Yeah. I would love for, and you know, if you and I can get that train going,
that's awesome.
You know, between ASU and PHX.
Yeah.
You know, just taking an active role in bridging that gap. Yeah. And, you know, doing research on stuff that, you know, people care about. Yeah. You know, people not necessarily care about, because I think that you know, all research has value to some degree. Yes. But stuff that people are genuinely interested in. Yeah. You know, and if you take a modality like CrossFit, you know, which already has people that are, you know, they're drinking the Kool-Aid by the gallon. You know what I mean? Or, okay, now we want to figure out if this programming is doing what it's intended to do, and this is how we're going to do it. I think that you would have no problem getting your test group. Your test group. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And well, I talked with a student just last week. It's like, I'm not affiliated with any particular thing in particular. I'm a very satisfied customer of something like CrossFit. But it's like, one of the things I learned was recruiting is hard. Yes. And you have tons of people walking in your door. Mm-hmm. I'm like, there it all is right there. Let's kind of bring it together a little bit so we can see that. And then the unique thing that you've always emphasized with your gym is community. Mm-hmm. All right, who do you live near that is not part of your gym that we want to get into the gym? Right. Why are they not coming to the gym? Let's break down some of those barriers and get more people. Right. Exercising. They don't have to come to the gym. All right, let's teach them some things if they want to do stuff on their own and whatnot. But it's like being part of the community. Mm-hmm. So you kind of emphasize community is important. That's how you.
I think that in anything, you know what I mean. Raising kids now, but both of us are new fathers and or starting a business.
Congratulations on your kid.
Thank you.
Awesome.
It. it doesn't matter what you're trying to be successful at. It takes a tribe.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that too much research is being done in singularity, you know, instead of, you know, let's do a study that the community can get behind.
Yeah.
You know, not that a sleep study on 40-year-old diabetic Caucasian women doesn't have validation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But you know, you can take something like CrossFit and do a study on a continuum of variables and substantiate it as, you know, just another justifiable reason to exercise, not even do fucking CrossFit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, this is why you should get your ass up off the couch and move.
Yeah.
And this is why.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and I think that the collaborative effort between practitioner and researcher, the smaller that gap becomes, the better off our population will be.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And you see technology seems to be, it's an aid in bridging that gap. With you have the walking, the trackers now, the apps. People are becoming more conscious about what they're eating, their health.
Yeah.
And I think technology's sort of helped bridge that gap.
Yeah.
And if you can sort of, not you specifically, but the researcher and, you know, the practitioners can piggyback off of that.
Yeah.
And find that sweet spot in the middle where the consumer is going to, you know, consume the UI, so to speak, but everything else, the data feeding into that, is actually something that's relevant to both parties.
Oh, that's huge.
You know,
it's huge to have the technology to measure what we want to measure. And even now it's constantly being developed and it's getting cheaper too, which everyone appreciates.
Right.
But I mean, the data is coming out. It's just we got to, you know, use the researcher to kind of use it, figure out the data, and then use that kind of the person, the practice, the collaborator to actually already get the people, get them working with the people. So
that's so cool.
Yeah.
Because that's really interesting, man. Because it's just looking in the tech, man. It's like I launch an app, and that next day I can see how many people in all around the world consumed this product that I released from Arizona. It's impressive, and I think if we leverage that a little bit more in our community and how some of these apps are doing, we can bridge the gap a lot faster than you said waiting years to get our research out or your research out there. I can't say I didn't do any research. I didn't do anything. I just get your research out there instead of I know there's protocols that you have to follow. Yeah. But I mean I think that the stuff that you guys you're researching, it has to be out there for the mass consumer to so to speak to digest. Yeah. Because instead of like you said, the muscle and fitness is just garbage, man.
Interesting. Yeah.
I mean, really and you know, to be fair, it's not all garbage, but it's misinterpreted information.
Yes.
That's even further allowed to be misinterpreted.
Yeah.
There is no, you know, correction towards back to the middle.
Yes.
You know, it's, you know, blanket statements to start with. Studies have shown this exercise to do this.
Asterisk.
But there's no abstract to follow that says the study that I made that statement about was only done on 40-year-old pre-diabetic Caucasian women. Well, guess what? I'm a 30-year-old athletic African-American male.
Yeah.
How valid, why would I, what benefit would I get from using that information in my regimen now? You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
So it's allowed to be taken out of context.
Yeah.
And it's an extreme failure, in my opinion, on media for lack of disclosure.
That's what it is. It's the media that's
not to be a conspiracy theorist.
No, but I mean, they control the message. Is what's getting out there. They're not going to put a valid research article that's very in depth, or they're going to put something that's, you know, pink and fluffy. Let's put the pink and fluffy out there because people look at that. Nobody wants to look at the in-depth article that has validity to it, that has weight and depth.
Well, I think Jeff nailed it. It's the asterisks. It's like studies. Okay, let me see them.
Yeah.
Let's see it. Let's see it. I want to see it. Can you provide a citation?
Right.
And I think that's. I think I would agree. I think media is trying to get out a message, but they may not be interpreting it right. It's like, all right, call or email. Email. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Email the person that wrote that study. Can you write a small section? I'd like to publish something to help translate this for muscle and fitness or whatnot. And then the researcher maybe say something. It's like, all right, don't toy with his words. It's there's certain citations you got to stick with. I think it comes down to accountability.
Yeah. Right.
And just making sure you're translating something important and just recognizing the importance of what you are putting out there. It's
the
X amount of
impact.
people are going to read this.
Yeah.
Make sure you get it right. It's not just something that's going to get you views. This is the health industry. You are impacting what someone's going to do and their ultimate health in the end.
Yeah. So what are you working on now, man?
Oh man, my research, I'd like to get more into, like I said, the practical things. I'm very much in figuring out, kind of looking at the 24-hour day, what to do and when for different people to optimize their sleep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's kind of my ultimate kind of research goal. If I wanted to get, all right, in 30 years, I wanted to kind of have an idea of, physical activity. All right, what kind? How much, how intense, what kind? More body weight, more weightlifting. And also the mobility side of things, because that's what my class is teaching flexibility. And we know it's like some flexibility practices will help with sleep, and then everything to kind of optimize your 24-hour day pattern.
In the next 5 years, are we going to be referring to you as Dr. Sandman?
Dr. Sandman.
You're the sleep guy?
The sleep expert. That'd be nice. That'd be nice. 5 years. Oh, that'd be a dream. Yeah. It's kind of, you take different pieces of it. You kind of integrate it. So that's kind of the overall goal as far as my plan is. It's like I'd like to get more into that.
That's awesome.
Where does your your passion for sleep research come from? Because that's not something I would walk into a PhD and say, I want to know about that.
Yeah.
Because I want to know about how much weight you can move and how fast, and the external factors that inhibit your ability to move it faster.
Yeah.
Like that's something that I would want to study. So at a surface level, sleep is not something people people directly correlate to performance. So where does that come from for you?
Personal experience.
Okay.
I mean, I joked with the class. That's one. My PhD taught me to do my job on very little sleep. But I joked with collaborator, me search. It's like I noticed that when my workouts started to change a little bit, I kind of cranked up the intensity. I noticed certain workouts during certain times of day made me feel different at night. Man, I was like, I slept great the other night after. I ended up doing like the reps for Murph, and then like 2 hours later, I slept like a baby. It's like interesting. I kind of like, all right, I practiced this. I want to find out why. I want to find the proof behind it. What is optimal activity? And then you throw in some of that mobility thing, which they found that stretching before bed will help with restless leg syndrome and those types of things. The bouncing knee is there's just pointed. Yeah, I have that also. But so that's kind of how I got into it. So
Me search.
I like it.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Copyright that.
Yeah, that's
Me search.
That's not mine. It belongs to a collaborator of mine. But he's like, me search. Yeah.
But I think you touched on a very good point though, because that's the part that I think people don't invest enough time in their fitness, health, nutrition journey is the me search. What truly works for me? The people that I know that have experienced the most success in whatever genre of fitness were the people that experimented the most. Did the chicken and white rice diet, did the paleo, did the zone, did the high carb, low fat, did the ketosis, did CrossFit, did bodybuilding, played sports, and really kind of just dialed it in. And, the consensus, and you'd have to research it to prove it. But in my experience, all of that comes together in the middle, and that's where the success is, man.
Yeah.
Is playing with it all.
Yeah. In my perspective so far, and I mean, I have a narrow vision as far as the number of people that I interact with, is that, the research, but doing the actual thing that, the research proves is besides the point. People can read all they want, but then it's like, oh, so do you do that? Well, no. They just read it. They study it. They don't actually do it,
right,
kind of thing. And I mean, I know Dr. Jess Nurek will attribute, it's like, it's amazing the amount of time I spent sedentary, staring at a computer screen while writing a dissertation on the benefits of physical activity.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
The paradox presents itself.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
I love it. That was incredible, man.
But it takes time to read everything, to be as knowledgeable as you can, and that is the job of an academic, is know that side of things. And again, kind of going back to the collaboration. All right, what about the experience with the everyday people? So.
That's awesome, man. Well, before we let you get out of here today, first of all, did we cover everything that you wanted to cover?
Absolutely. That was a great discussion.
Cool.
Yeah.
We want to know about your daily routine, man.
Yeah.
What makes you successful? What led you to be a PhD? And I'm going to have you answer that by answering two questions. The first of which, what do you do each and every day to feed yourself? Get the fire lit, get the motivation going. And then part two of that is, what do you do to fuel yourself and keep that fire lit, as you push through 20 semesters of research and study, man. Like, so what do you do to kickstart the day, and what do you do to keep yourself going, man?
I think what I have found, again, earning my PhD has taught me, is reading, is that getting that education in. It's that learning something. I feel like I was put on this earth to learn and to share my knowledge with others. And it's what I hope makes me a good teacher. And so I feel like that kind of gets me going. It's like, I feel like if I get in a few pages or an article on something, a certain book, it's like just learning something in the day kind of keeps the day going. It makes me, it kind of gives me confidence. It's like understanding different things that I may not know. It's definitely that obtaining knowledge.
Sure.
So, and then
what do you do to keep it going, man?
Oh, to fuel me. Passion. You got to find something you're interested in. I mean, I share that with you. You got to find something you're passionate about. Like I said, exercise. I could talk about it. I could analyze it. I could break down my WOD for Trent times, and it's like, all right, let's shorten that gap right there. Let's bump up the weight a little bit and make a better time next time. And then, recent passion, my son. Could talk about it for hours.
Boom.
Love it.
That's awesome.
It's just finding that things that you are passionate about. Kind of gets. I mean, I walk in the house at the end of the day, and it's like seeing that smile.
There it is.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all you need right there.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then where can this community go to support you, your research, anything that you have going on, whether it's personal, academia? Where can they go to support you and everything you have?
Yeah, I mean, email. I mean, people feel free to email me. I'm at Arizona State University.
Okay.
You can definitely find me in the School of Nutrition and Health Promotion, Jonathan.Kurka at asu.edu. Okay. And I can kind of share with you what I'm interested in. If you're interested in a different topic, I'm always open to kind of bouncing people to kind of more of an area of expertise. So I always try to encourage that collaboration and never kind of shut it off. So
awesome.
Yeah.
And if you guys want to be part of his test groups, reach out to him too.
Hey, what studies you got going? I can kind of point in different directions. So.
That's awesome,
yeah,
man.
For sure.
Dude, this is fantastic, brother.
Absolutely. Thanks
so
for
much.
having me.
Dude,
yeah, thanks for joining.
Thank you so much, man. We've been anticipating this episode for a very long time because quite frankly, I didn't know how it was going to go. I mean, this is such a volatile topic between researcher and practitioner,
Absolutely.
man. You know, but it's always good when you can have such a debatable topic with cool heads and get quality information out there. And I feel like we've succeeded in that today.
Yeah.
You know,
It was enlightening.
So, yeah. So much appreciated, brother. Thanks for exposing the elephant with us.
Hey, absolutely.
Yeah. And until next time, guys, you know, reach out to John. He's got a he's got a wealth of knowledge, and he's got a network of people that can also shed some light on some things that may or may not be outside of his expertise. So, you know, hit him up. He's in the database on the asu.edu website. And until next time, guys, feed me, fuel me.
And that'll do it for this week's episode with our special guest, Dr. Jonathan Kurka. If you want to see everything Dr. Jonathan Kurka has going on, please go look at the full show notes on feedmefuelme.com. Also, be sure to connect with us on social media, including Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, and Twitter at feedmefuelme. We would love to hear from each and every one of you. We're excited to announce the Feed Me Fuel Me Summit on July 10th, 2017 in Sedona, Arizona. Our keynote speaker will be Forrest Lustos. If you haven't had a chance to hear Forrest's story yet, be sure to check out his episode, number 19, Mastering the Superficial and Becoming Exceptional. It's guaranteed to fire you up and make you take action. We've released event details on the website and will continue to update them in the coming weeks. Be sure to go to feedmefuelme.com, click on the link 2017 Summit, purchase your ticket, and we'll see you there. If you found this episode inspiring in any way, please rate, comment, share, and subscribe so we can continue on this journey together. Also, be sure to share it with your friends and family on social media, including Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, or any other social platforms that you use. We really appreciate you spending your time with us today and allowing us to join you on your journey. We would love to hear your feedback on this episode, as well as guests and topics for future episodes. To end this episode, we would love to leave you with a quote by John F. Kennedy. Physical fitness is not only one of the most important keys to having a healthy body, it is the basis of dynamic and creative intellectual activity. Thank you again for joining us, and we will catch you on the next episode.